After spending all his money on an old motorcycle, a delivery man discovers that it's actually a monster. Instead of consuming fuel, it fills its tank by devouring its victims. Today, we're going to recap the story of the movie I Bought a Vampire Motorcycle from 1990. On a dark night, a group of occultists gathers beneath a highway to perform a malevolent ritual. Cult leader begins the rite to summon Ahriman, the Prince of Hell. The ritual is nearly complete when a gang of heavily armed bikers arrives on the scene. Their leader, Roach, aims his crossbow at the cultists and shoots an arrow, striking an elderly man who collapses lifeless into the fire. Moments later, the bikers attack, slaughtering the remaining cult members with knives and axes. After the bloodshed, the gang revels in their victory until Roach is startled by one of the fallen cultists who suddenly moves. Acting on reflex, Roach fires another shot, but this time it hits the fuel tank of a motorcycle. With no one left to fight, the gang rides away, unaware that the cult leader has been revived by a demonic spirit. His face twisted and deformed, he rises, looking over the lifeless bodies of his companions. Stumbling forward like a zombie, he eventually finds the motorcycle that was struck by the arrow. Without hesitation, he opens the fuel tank and pours his own blood into it. As his body collapses, Ahriman's spirit is transferred into the bike. The next day, a delivery man named Nodi visits a motorcycle shop in search of a classic bike. The shop owner offers him a Commando Norton for $1,500. Seeing that the tank is damaged, Nodi negotiates the price down to $1,100 in cash. The owner agrees, and Nodi promises to pick up the bike later, unaware of its dark history. He returns to work and meets his girlfriend, Kim, who also works in deliveries. Nodi tells her about the bike but lies about the price, claiming he only paid $600. Later, he picks up the bike with his friend Buzzer and takes it to Kim's house. While there, Buzzer discreetly steals the fuel cap but pretends nothing happened. Nodi attempts to start the bike, but it won't turn over. Buzzer quickly identifies the issue and fixes it, though he accidentally cuts his hand in the process. A few drops of his blood land on the engine, unknowingly feeding the cursed machine. The next morning, Kim and Nodi leave the bike at the shop for repairs before heading to work. Before leaving, they notice something odd. The missing fuel cap is mysteriously back in place. At work, Kim receives a call from the police. Buzzer has been involved in a horrific accident. Nodi rushes to the scene, where a neighbor tells him that someone broke into Buzzer's house during the night. A policeman leads Nodi inside, revealing a blood-soaked crime scene with tire marks streaked across the walls. Inspector Cleaver, the officer investigating the case, shows Nodi Buzzer's mutilated body. His head has been severed. After some questioning, Cleaver assures Nodi that he'll be in touch if anything new arises. Nodi, eager to escape both the gruesome sight and the inspector's overpowering garlic breath, quickly leaves. That evening, Nodi replaces the damaged tank on his bike. Kim arrives, still shaken by Buzzer's gruesome fate, but Nodi seems unfazed. As he steps away to grab his helmet, Kim admires the bike, unaware that it is watching her back. Soon, Nodi takes the bike for a test ride. The night is peaceful until the biker gang that attacked the occultists suddenly appears. Possessed motorcycle senses its enemies and takes control, speeding past the gang and knocking them off their bikes. Now he is startled by the threats echoing down the street as the bikers yell about seeking revenge on him. Still shaken, he heads home to calm down. Just as he starts to relax, a knock on the door interrupts him. Inspector Cleaver has arrived, pressing for more answers. His overwhelming garlic breath bothers Naui, who insists he has nothing more to add to the case. The inspector eventually leaves but drops off a bag containing Buzzer's belongings for Naui to keep. Curiously, Naui opens it, only to recoil in horror at the sight of Buzzer's severed head, but it was all just a nightmare. The next day, Naui and Kim get ready to attend Buzzer's funeral at the cemetery. As they step outside, Naui is puzzled. His motorcycle is missing from where he parked it the night before. Kim helps him search and eventually finds it in the garage. She assumes he simply forgot moving it there, but Naui remains unsettled. Tempting to start the bike, he notices it stubbornly refuses to move out of the dark garage, almost as if avoiding the sunlight. With no other choice, they push it out and head to the cemetery. During the funeral, Naui helps carry Buzzer's coffin. Suddenly, he notices the biker gang riding past the cemetery. They create chaos wherever they go, but fortunately, they don't seem to recognize him. Afterward, Naui returns home and attempts to repair his bike. It refuses to start until night falls. The moment darkness sets in, the motorcycle suddenly roars to life. Unaware of this eerie coincidence, Naui takes Kim to a bar for a night out. However, their relaxation is short-lived as the biker gang shows up once again. Roach, the gang leader, spots Naui's motorcycle and immediately storms into the bar. Naui orders drinks, but before he can take a sip, an arrow flies past him, shot by Roach. He ignores it and heads to the pool table with Kim. Roach refuses to let things slide. To provoke Naui further, one of his men, Copper, tries hitting on Kim. She shuts him down, but Copper retaliates by slamming an axe into the pool table. As the weapon gets stuck, Naui seizes the moment, striking him in the face with a pool cue. Enraged, Roach grabs another cue and lunges at Naui. But Naui, experienced in bar fights, blocks the attack. A chaotic brawl erupts, spilling into another room filled with medieval armor and melee weapons. Roach arms himself with a sword, forcing Naui to do the same. They climb atop a massive table and duel fiercely. Despite being outnumbered, Naui manages to hold his own. With Kim's help, he shoves Roach off the table and urges her to grab the motorcycle for their escape. Meanwhile, Naui grabs 2 more swords and prepares for another attack. Roach and his gang refuse to back down. They ambush Naui on the staircase, but he uses the confined space to his advantage, knocking them all down the stairs. Seizing the moment, Naui leaps out of a window and lands in a garbage bin. As he struggles to get out, Roach fires another arrow, striking Naui's arm. Gritting through the pain, Naui escapes and finds Kim waiting on the motorcycle. They speed away. After the chaotic fight, they take a breather at a Chinese food stall. While ordering, Kim casually asks for prawns with extra garlic. The mere mention of garlic, the motorcycle suddenly revs up in anger. Before Naui realizes what's happening, the bike speeds off, taking Kim with it. Kim panics, struggling to control the possessed machine. It drags her down a dark alley, throwing her to the pavement. As she scrambles to her feet, the bike charges at her, front wheels spinning menacingly. With no way to escape, Kim clutches the crucifix around her neck. The sight of it stops the motorcycle in its tracks. It hesitates, then suddenly retreats. But its bloodlust isn't gone. The motorcycle roars off, heading straight back to the bar. Inside, Roach hears the familiar engine outside and sends Copper to investigate. Stepping outside, Copper is met with a horrifying sight. His own bike has been completely wrecked by the possessed motorcycle. Enraged, the man jumps onto the bike, determined to hunt down its owner and take revenge. Before he can react, massive iron spikes emerge from the seat, piercing into his legs. He screams in agony as blood seeps through his jeans. The possessed motorcycle isn't done. It violently throws him into an iron railing. His body shatters on impact, lifeless. Minutes later, his fellow bikers exit the bar and hit the road. But lurking behind them, the demonic motorcycle appears, revving up for carnage. It launches into a high-speed chase, picking them off one by one. Riding on its back wheel, it deploys spinning harpoons, decapitating its victims effortlessly. Blood splatters across the pavement. Roach, the last survivor, turns in horror to see all his friends slaughtered. Desperate, he pulls out a crossbow and fires his last arrow, striking the motorcycle's headlight. As it prepares to finish him off, something unexpected happens. Just as Roach braces for the end, they pass a road sign, a stop symbol shaped like a cross. Cursed motorcycle screeches to a halt and turns away. Meanwhile, Nobby returns home, missing both his bike and his girlfriend. His phone rings. Kim is in the hospital, injured. He rushes there immediately, heart pounding. Elsewhere, Roach also stumbles into the hospital, wounded from the motorcycle's attack. The dart is lodged in a rather unfortunate spot. Little does he know, back at the crime scene, police are collecting the mutilated bodies of his gang members, all decapitated by the vampire motorcycle. Inspector Cleaver arrives at the hospital. Without hesitation, he cuffs Roach and hauls him in for questioning. Meanwhile, in a dark alley, the vampire motorcycle lurks in the shadows. A beautiful woman walks by, oblivious. The motorcycle suddenly revs up, its engine growling. The bike surges toward her, its headlights glowing like menacing eyes. Cross town, Nobby reaches the hospital and finds Kim terrified. She insists the bike is possessed, but he dismisses it as shock. Yet deep inside, doubt creeps in. The police station, Roach is interrogated by Inspector Cleaver. His claims sound ridiculous. Meanwhile, the demonic motorcycle continues its reign of terror. In the dead of night, it parks in a no-parking zone, lying in wait. A traffic warden approaches, ready to issue a ticket. She places the fine on its broken headlight. Suddenly, the headlight morphs into a gaping mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. The next morning, the vampire motorcycle returns to the garage. Nobby, preparing for work, notices the open door. Cautiously, he steps inside and freezes. His bike is there, but something is horribly wrong. A severed human leg is jammed in the headlight. His stomach churns. He lifts the fuel cap, expecting gasoline. Panic surges through him. Desperate for answers, Nobby rushes to a church. The assistant tells him the priest won't arrive until morning. But Nobby won't wait. He threatens the man, demanding to see the priest immediately. The assistant, intimidated, leads him inside. In the confessional, the priest assumes Nobby wants to confess. But instead, Nobby pleads for help. His motorcycle has turned into a vampire. Priest, of course, doesn't believe him. But Nobby insists this is demonic possession. They return to Nobby's garage, the priest riding his own souped-up bike. But when they arrive, there's no human leg. No signs of anything supernatural. Nobby urges him to check the fuel tank. Priest hesitantly unscrews the cap and peers inside. It's too dark to see, so he tries to push the bike into better light. With a sickening crunch, the lever slices through the priest's fingers. Nobby rushes him to the hospital where Kim is still recovering. Now there's no doubt the bike is cursed. To exorcise it, they must discover what sinister entity controls it. Priest calls New York to assist with the exorcism, but first, he hands Kim a crucifix and several heads of garlic for protection. Finally, the two return to the church, arming themselves with vampire hunting tools, including a crucifix that functions like a shuriken. With their weapons ready, they immediately head for the garage, knowing that sunlight will be essential in battling the vampire motorcycle. However, the bike senses their approach and uses its magic to damage their motorcycle mid-journey. Their only option is to take the bus, wasting precious daylight. The sun is nearly gone by the time they arrive. The garage, darkness has fallen, making the bike more powerful than ever. Priest begins the exorcism ritual, clutching the Bible in one hand, but nothing seems to work. The vampire motorcycle retaliates, summoning fierce winds that hurl objects at New York and the priest. A wire crown strikes his head, mocking the image of the crucified Christ. Despite the pain, the priest remains determined, continuing the exorcism. The vampire motorcycle begins to weaken, and the priest decides to finish the ritual by dousing it with holy water. However, the water melts the bike's fuel tank, causing iron spears to protrude from its body. The bike speeds away, but New York grabs a wooden crucifix and pulls the priest out of the garage just in time. They slam the garage door shut and barricade it with the crucifix. Priest runs to get the police, while New York tries to hold the door. New York is forced to flee, leaving the entity free once again. In desperation, New York spots a police officer's motorcycle and takes off on it. Meanwhile, the vampire motorcycle speeds off after him, catching the attention of two police officers in a patrol car. They initiate a chase, but the bike evades them and heads straight for the hospital. Unfortunately, this is the same hospital where Kim is waiting for news of her boyfriend. A nurse enters to care for her and, disturbed by the garlic smell, removes all the garlic and crucifixes from the room before giving Kim a bath. After the nurse finishes, Kim tries to rest but hears the sound of an approaching engine. Clutching a crucifix in fear, she is relieved when another nurse enters with dinner. However, her suspicions prove correct as the vampire motorcycle crashes through the window. It attacks the nurse with sharp projectiles, pinning her to the wall before cutting her in half with the food trolley. The vampire motorcycle then turns toward Kim, but she grabs a crucifix in defense. Once again, the crucifix protects her, forcing the motorcycle to flee toward the highway. Meanwhile, Roach, recently released from police custody, finds himself pursued once more. In panic, he loses control and crashes into a parked car, flying through a funeral home window and landing in a coffin. The impact shuts the lid, trapping him inside. With Roach eliminated, the motorcycle continues its pursuit, finding New York in the town square. Charges at him, but New York scales a bridge, causing the bike to get stuck in a crevice. Seizing the moment, New York lifts the bike from behind and drops it into the water. Its headlight flickers out, making him believe the nightmare is over. However, as he circles the lake, the headlight suddenly glows red again. Realizing the entity is still alive, New York runs in terror. He spots Inspector Cav's car, where Kim and the priest are waiting to help. But in his panic, New York ignores them and keeps running, eventually seeking refuge in a gym. He barricades the door, confusing the gym members. Moments later, the vampire motorcycle crashes through. One brave gym member tries to push it back, only to have his hand impaled by a dart. The bike goes on a rampage, chasing people inside. New York grabs an iron rod and strikes, but the motorcycle retaliates with a spinning harpoon, severing his leg. Despite his injury, New York lures the bike closer and smashes its headlight, knocking it unconscious. Inspector Cleaver, Kim, and the priest arrive, believing the danger has passed. However, as Academy members attempt to remove the bike, it reactivates and kills them. Then lunges at Inspector Cleaver, who fights back with an iron baton. Trapped against the wall, the inspector resorts to an unconventional weapon, his powerful garlic breath. The stench overwhelms the motorcycle, forcing it to recoil. But it quickly recovers and charges at New York, cornering him against a wall. As the bike prepares to finish him off, New York accidentally activates the gym's ultraviolet lights. The bike's bodywork begins to melt. Inspector Cleaver reinforces the attack with another blast of garlic breath, pushing it closer to the light. New York, Kim, and the priest raise their crucifixes, accelerating the bike's destruction. At last, the demonic motorcycle is defeated. With the terror behind them, Kim and New York return to their normal lives. New York resumes work in his garage, but an accident leaves him with a bleeding hand. Kim takes him to get treated, leaving the bloody rag behind. Unnoticed, the rag lands on the old tank of the possessed motorcycle. As the blood seeps in, the tank suddenly opens and pulls the cloth inside. The vampire motorcycle is still alive. What did you think of this movie? Leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe